The Nature of Personal Reality, a Seth book by Jane Roberts, read by Martin John. Part 2, Chapter 19.
Session 667, May 30, 1973, 9:26 p.m., Wednesday. Good evening. Dictation.
Rupert was working with alterations of consciousness this afternoon. At the same time, he had the radio playing softly. The rock music program was interrupted by an announcement having to do with the Indianapolis Speed Car Racing Exhibition, the 57th Indianapolis 500-mile race. One driver had already been severely injured, and the race put off on that account, and because of inclement weather, finally began today. As it progressed, the radio announcements continued also, and Rupert learned that another very severe accident had occurred. Besides this, a man, not a driver, was killed by an emergency vehicle speeding to the scene. The victim was connected with the race, however. As he resumed normal consciousness, Rupert found himself wondering about the great violence involved and the entire situation in which such people placed themselves. He often has the radio on when he is working with alternate states of consciousness, by the way, using it as a point of reference. Some of the material in the last chapter should help to explain the reasons for frameworks in which violence is built in, so to speak, and indeed becomes a challenging context through which reality is perceived. The situation is one of danger, yet is chosen by those involved and is not inflicted upon them. In somewhat the same way, entire life contexts are selected that might appear to be incomprehensible, foolhardy, and even insane to an observer. These lifetime organizations may involve very drastic physical disabilities from birth. From the outside, it seems impossible that anyone would choose such a background, such a highly restricted or even painful situation in which to live. From that viewpoint, birth defects or lifetime diseases of any kind make no sense. No one begins a race with a handicap, you may say, but that is obviously not the case. Individuals have often chosen such situations precisely as incentives, and many great men have done so. This does not mean that such disabilities are necessary. At any point that an individual realizes his point of power in the present, he will not need a barrier to test himself against, or to focus him in what he thinks of as the proper direction. You live many lives simultaneously. You often think of these as reincarnational existences, one before the other. If you are severely ill and believe that the reasons for your symptoms exist in a past life, that you must put up with it, then you will not realize that your point of power is in the present, and you will not believe in the possibility of recovery. Again, even so-called incurable diseases can be healed as long as this does not involve regenerations not possible within the context of creaturehood. In your terms, birth defects of whatever kind are chosen before this life. This is done for many different reasons, just as people choose to be ill in this life regardless of the duration involved. That is, a certain psychic framework is set up through which an individual decides ahead of time to experience entire life situation. Some information on this has been given in my other writings. A person with several existences stressing intellectual achievement might purposely then decide upon a life in which mental abilities are beyond him, and the emotions allowed a full play that he had denied them earlier. Since all existences are simultaneous, this simply means his stressing certain aspects in this life at the expense of others, you would say, and setting up a framework of reference that may seem to be limiting. On the other hand, the personality involved may see this as a most rewarding and expansive experience, in which the emotions are allowed freedoms ordinarily denied. Characteristically, some personalities prefer lifetime experiences in which accomplishment and development follows an even course. Others demand great contrast. One of the latter may be miserably poor in one life, luxuriously rich in another, an intellectual giant in still another, a great athlete, and then a complete invalid. Individual differences operate then in the kinds of life situations chosen. In many cases, it is the family, rather than the incapacitated member, who questions and does not understand. As in cases of severely mentally retarded children, for example. Yet in all instances, not only do children choose their parents ahead of time, but parents choose their children, of course. In such a situation, there are fulfillments to be gained from the parent's standpoint. There are always opportunities of growth and unusual creativity possible under those conditions for all involved. That is why the framework was chosen. The same applies to seeming tragedies such as accidents or severe illness that come at any time. On an individual basis, a grave illness, for instance, will represent the adoption of a particular highly intense focus in which a given aspect of usual experience is deliberately cut out or denied. The context of life itself must then be magnified along other lines. In somewhat the same manner, this also applies to those born in extreme poverty or in the most seemingly unfortunate of family situations. The life challenge is inherent within the problem itself and springs from it. Usually, though not always, a particular personal achievement results precisely because of the given difficulty. Now, this accomplishment need not involve some great artwork or invention, or political leadership, for example, though it may. Often, the successful activity represents a challenge on the part of the personality who set it in terms of psychological creativity. And the overall enrichment of experience, those involved, such as family, will have acquiesced to the situation earlier, often particularly in the case of mental or physical birth defects. The incapacitated person will be accepting that role not only because of personal reasons. He or she will also be choosing that part for the family as a whole. Highly intelligent parents, therefore, may find themselves with a retarded child. If they place a great value upon intellect at the expense of emotions, then the child may be acting out for them the emotional spontaneity of which they are so afraid themselves. A birth defect is obvious and sets up certain conditions that cannot be ignored. Many ordinary illnesses also involve the family group to some degree. The predominating beliefs of the sick person will always be paramount, however. The group situation will encompass an acquiescence on the part of the family members. Now understand that the same thing applies in the case of unusual achievements. In those instances, the achiever's beliefs predominate, and yet apart from this, he may also be acting out the unrealized aspirations of his family members, or of the group in which he is intimately involved. There will always be reasons for such interrelationships. Many great contrasts of a social nature have the same kind of inner meaning. Here, whole groups of individuals choose particular life situations in which, for example, poverty and illness predominate, while other areas of the world, or of any given nation, enjoy the highest technological advances, wealth, and prosperity. Separately, each personality has a private reason for such an affiliation. But on other levels, through the contrasting focuses of poverty and wealth, scientific accomplishments or the lack of them, opposites are brilliantly apparent. Technological progress, followed as a main focus, automatically portrays its beliefs and its disadvantages. A nation which pursues this course is like one individual who primarily follows a strictly objective, male, externally oriented path in terms of your Western understanding. Certain values have been stressed in your country, particularly in the recent present. These attributes were pursued at the expense of others for individual reasons, and those en masse. The rest of the world agreed to such actions, however, and various portions of it took entirely different courses, so that in your experience global society would show a kaleidoscope of varying focuses and their results. On a much smaller scale and to different degrees, any tribe, town, family, or group will show the same tendencies, and from the shared experience each individual will learn and grow. A person may choose a great talent instead, through which he or she will perceive reality and concentrate all experience. This will serve as a formidable focus. Yet by its nature it may often preclude other experiences that many individuals find quite normal. Some artists with great ability may shut out intellectual maturity, utilizing native emotional qualities to such an extent and with such intensity that the mental reasoning faculties are largely shunted aside. Without rational illumination, the emotional elements may be so unwieldy that the artist, for all of his spontaneous expression, cannot relate in any kind of permanent situation of an intimate nature. For reason and emotion are natural counterparts. Someone else may choose to focus upon intellectual achievement to such a degree that he shuts out all true closeness, and though he can accept a permanent relationship, he will not experience the emotional richness that others may derive from a much briefer encounter. Therefore, each of you choose, ahead of time, in your terms, the kind of framework through which you will contend with this life situation. This applies personally and collectively. Those who believe in reincarnation will ask, what about past life beliefs? And even if I forget the idea of guilt, am I bound to follow the rules of karma? Since all is simultaneous, your present beliefs can alter your past ones, whether from this life or a previous one. Existences are open-ended. Now with your ideas of progressive time and the resulting beliefs in cause and effect, I realize this is difficult for you to understand. Yet within the abilities of your creaturehood, your current beliefs can change your experience. You can restructure your reincarnational past in the same way that you can restructure the past in the present life. In the center of the page, bold, the point of power is in the present. This experienced present also represents your psychic touchstone to all of your other existences. You are consciously aware of certain events and unconsciously aware of much more that in one way or another you are learning to bring into conscious focus. The same applies to all of your other reincarnational selves. They are unconsciously aware of your conscious experience, as you are unconsciously aware of theirs. The interaction is constant, however, and in all of your presence, creative. You draw on their knowledge as they draw on yours. And this, of course, applies to personalities that you would consider future. You have a gigantic pool of information and experience to draw upon, but this will be utilized according to your present conscious beliefs. If you understand that the point of power is in the present, then you have an inexhaustible realm of ability and energy at your command.
End of session.
Peace, light, and love. Aloha.